This is On FM on 101.4.
Tell us a bit about what has happened.
Well, essentially, let's take our minds back a week, actually, and look at Manchester United versus Liverpool.
Oh.
Right? We had, a great game, that, actually, I think. But
beside the point.
Patrice Evra, Manchester United player, has accused Suarez, Liverpool player, of racism. Apparently, 10 to 12 times during that match, racial abuse was issued towards Patrice Evra. Now, this is Manchester United, Liverpool. A week later, we find John Terry playing for Chelsea against QPR, and he's allegedly called Anton Ferdinand, words which I can't repeat on radio.
Oh, thank goodness me.
But it's very, very unpleasant.
Yep.
I understand that Anton Ferdinand was rather reluctant to do something about it, but felt really he had no choice. His club, QPR, are backing him. I picked up the paper today, and there is going to be an FA inquiry.
Good.
Good.
Absolutely, especially, and it's just embarrassing. And also, on the night of, you've got Blacklist Awards going on in London, you've got all these fantastic kick racism out of football, these all these fantastic academies going up where everybody is learning, learning together, there's a lot of inclusivity, and children are growing up without knowing really, I've noticed, without knowing what racism is. So the children are actually almost less aware of the of the skin colour difference of this generation than the parents are. They're growing up in a school and there's no, because they're so young, there's no racial divide at all, really.
Also, like you were saying earlier...
Yeah, it's
you're
brilliant.
saying that, it's brilliant, but it doesn't mean the work is finished.
Well, not with John Terry, who's in the pinnacle of...
Yeah, like you were saying, people see these people as role models, and for him to have, never come out with a racist slur, obviously, a lot of people don't make racist remarks. So for him to come out and say something like that just undermines, like you say, all of these things that people do to try and bring equality and to show people actually it's really unacceptable to do that. And people look up to these people and you just think, it's unbelievable that he thinks that it is acceptable to say that, whether he thought he was going to get found out or not, whether Anton Ferdinand wanted to say that, and the fact that he felt reluctant to be able to come forward and say something like this.
You're absolutely right. But I mean, you see, the whole thing with the Arthur Wharton symbol, if you like, the statue, I mean, when I gave this talk at the House of Commons recently, one thing sprung to mind as I was talking to the Deputy Commissioner of the High Commissioner of Ghana. And she said, Shaun, this statue, so what exactly does it represent to you? And I said, well, think of the discrimination and oppression of women, right? You're women, okay? Mm-hmm. When it hits at the sharp end of that wedge and you are discriminated against simply because of your gender, it hurts, doesn't it? And it's an itch you can't scratch.
Makes you so angry, though, as well.
Right, okay. Now, that is exactly how the black and immigrant person feels when what I'm saying is, you have much more in common with the black community than you think. But consciously think about it.
Yeah.
Because you're all in it together. Think about the disabled person who at the sharp end of that wedge experiences discrimination and oppression. Okay, that person feels the pain of their position acutely. That's exactly how the black and the immigrant person feels when they're discriminated against. And then think about those people who have issues of sexuality, gay and lesbian people, who are discriminated and oppressed simply because of the way they feel and the way they are. It hurts when you experience discrimination. Now, that simply says to me, we have a lot more in common than we have that's different. If we just open our eyes to it, and we consciously think about it, don't hear it from me and then let it go out of your consciousness tomorrow.
Yeah.
If you understand what it is I'm trying to say, and you take it on board, remind others about it. The reason I mention that is there was one young lady, she's perhaps about 17 now. She was 16 at the time, 15 and a half, 16 at the time. She was quite a very racist young white female. But I had an opportunity to talk to her whilst doing this creative arts programme that I was doing for somebody. And she explained why she was racist to me. She knew my father was black and my mother was white. And she had all kinds of ideas about what racism was. But one thing that struck me was that when I said to her, so as a girl, do boys, or as a woman, do men treat you differently just because you're a woman? She said, oh, I can't repeat the way she spoke, but it was very, oh, God, yeah, this is, they treat me like this, and they think I'm just nothing because I'm a girl. And I said, right, okay, give me an example of how it played out. And she gave me one. I said, do you know something? That is exactly how I felt when playing a game of football against a team in Newton Aycliffe a year earlier. And I was, I'd just come back from Barbados. I was particularly dark at the time as well, so I suppose, I gave... and anyway,
I think that's irrelevant.
Well, it is irrelevant. But in the eyes of the onlooker, I was dark, and They called me some horrendous names. I said, do you realise that how you felt when these boys and these men treat you like that? It's exactly how I... And today, she's one of our biggest supporters.
Good.
That is incredible, isn't it?
It is. Isn't it?
But also, how ridiculous her initial views were, that they could, A, be changed like by you just saying, why don't you put yourself in someone else's shoes? The fact that she hadn't even thought, you know what, I can't recognise your feelings because I only recognise my own, and I don't see myself as similar to a black person or how they feel.
Never made the correlation between
discrimination,
the exact feeling of her feelings and those of a black person when it hits a discrimination.
So you talking to her for that minimal amount of time completely changed her views, which shows how important education
but it also shows how little people have invested in her.
Incredible. Thank you very much.
Exactly it. That's why it's so important.
And also, but hardly anyone's obviously invested enough time in, you know, opening her eyes to that sort of thing. Just wanted to say as well, with John Terry, I don't think he should be allowed to be in such a pivotal position of influence. First of all this he was in loads of sex scandals and stuff like that, wasn't he? Yeah. And firstly that, which is derogatory to women. Actually, I find it embarrassing that he is in such a position of power and influence that he can go around and treat women like that. Secondly, he was in front of. He might not have realised, you know, that he was going to get caught. He knows how much scrutiny those matches are under with all the cameras. And if he's like that in front of a camera, what's he like?
Exactly.
What sort of person is he?
But
he should not be appointed.
Is there going to be any penalty to him?
I think so.
First of all, let's not jump to them too much. I mean, he could be innocent. I mean, you know, this is. I mean, there's all kinds of evidence that's looking like perhaps, you know, there's a lot of truth in this story. I'm one of those who tends to lean on that side of the fence, but I think that, you know, as an individual, I agree with you, Lola, 100%. He's got to be much more, he should be much more aware. He's under scrutiny 24 hours a day and he knows it. Yeah. So why does he then allow himself to lapse into this very ugly kind of character that he presents to us, and ignorant? But again, I don't want to judge the guy too harshly until... I mean, why would Anton Ferdinand make it up?
Well, yeah, exactly. But I think they should have a moral crossover as well. You should have to be squeaky clean. You know, like politicians, how you can actually cross-reference everything they've ever done. You know, bring up stuff from their past, from when they were 15 or whatever. That should be. They're publicly accountable, and I think footballers should be publicly accountable. Good point.
But also, we talk about, you know, I'm one of those people who thinks that what goes on in your personal, private life is your own business, and I don't care how well known you are. It should be. It's personal. Having said that, I don't think, you know, it's my right to say that everybody else should feel the same way. It's just my personal view. This, however, with John Terry, was on the public arena, on the football pitch, in front of millions of viewers. And you think of how many prolific lip readers there are out there.
You just think it just proves that he's not very bright.
It proves that he lost his bottle for a moment. Yeah, and maybe that. But
even to have that vocabulary, though, because actually to have that in your head that race is a thing to use as an insult, then to me that's... You know, it's the same as that. If you use any minority as an insult, as an insult. I use ignorant as an insult. You know, I would never ever use anything else.
Do you know how long it took for a black player to play for Chelsea, incidentally?
How long?
The first black player to play for Chelsea was a chap called Paul Canaville, a lovely man who came to Darlington and walked on the very ground where Arthur Wharton made his name. 1982. The first black player.
That is mad.
What's that, 100 years after Arthur Wharton?
It's 100 plus years.
That's 3 years before I was born.
Yeah, well, there you go.
That's 27 years.
Wow. The first black player to play for England was our patron, Viv Anderson. That was 1978. So it took a good 4 years after England could play a black player for Chelsea to play one.
What?
I mean, I'm not saying there's anything in that relation to today and today's players. It's just
because there shouldn't be positive discrimination either. I don't agree with that. You know, like all women shortlists and stuff like that. I don't know how I feel about that.
There's room for it, but you have to discuss it very... It's a tricky one, but there are certain... For example, the phrase black child of a white parent to describe mixed race people. There is a place to use that as a phrase. But you see, when you tick a box, you tick white. My father ticks black. Much of my life, I had to tick other. Now we have multiple choices.
Oh, yeah.
This is On FM on 101.4.